Greetings and salutations, YouTubers. This is ZillaFan85, and I, of course, represent YouTube's bargain basement of the airwaves. I'm back today with my latest video, my latest figure review. Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at my Super 7 Rose Form Biollante figure. So very excited about this, and before we get into it, I do want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to my good friend Nick Adam at the Monster Report. He helped me with that little opening skit that you guys saw. He did all the effects and whatnot for that little clip that I shot. So again, Nick, thank you so much. You are absolutely awesome. The man is second to none when it comes to creating those effects and doing all that really cool video editing and design work and whatnot. So again, thank you so much, Nick at the Monster Report, for doing that for me and for your help. And if you guys haven't checked his channel out, like I said, definitely go ahead and do so. Give him a subscribe if you haven't, because he is absolutely awesome, puts out awesome content. But let's go ahead, let's jump into this figure review here. So like I said, this is the Super 7 Rose Form Biollante. Now we've gotten a few of these figures, a few, different brands putting out figures of Rose Biollante. They have the Bandai one now, the Movie Monster series, and they have YMSF, I believe, has one. Plus there's some other, like the more off brands like Marmot and whatnot, that have some that are more stylized. But to me, this was the one that I, had been eyeing. I like the size on it, because like the Bandai one, for example, from what I've seen, it's pretty small, and she should be a little bit more imposing, I think. Plus the fact that this is a super articulated figure as well. So this is from the Super 7 Ultimates line. This, of course, was the original wave that came out with the 1989 Godzilla figure to go with this. That figure, from everything I've seen, I'm not too thrilled with it. But this one, though, I think does a pretty good job. Is it perfect? No, definitely not. But it is a pretty good representation, I think, of Rose Form Biollante, and I'm very happy to have it. Definitely glad to have this version of Biollante, because usually you'll just get her final form, the beast form. So not, like I said, now lately there's a few more options, but still overall not a ton of options to get a Rose form. But nonetheless, though, very, very awesome. Let's go ahead and jump into it here, folks. We're going to start with the paint and the detail work. And of course, what stands out the most is the rose petal that Biollante has here for her face and head. Very, very nicely detailed. It's done in this sort of really like a ruby red paint scheme here. Nice popping sort of red color to it, and you guys can see all the detail work done for like the rose petals throughout as well, and it captures that look pretty darn well. I think you guys can see all the grooves and whatnot here that make up all the different rose petals for her face. So really, really cool. I really like it. You got it on the sides of the head there as well. And then, of course, in the center, you've got that mouth with the teeth on there. They're done in sort of like a creamish bone color, if you guys are picking that up with the camera there. Very, very cool, I think. And and there, it's a closed mouth. There's no articulation on it or anything, but they're all individually etched in, and they've got it doesn't feel too sharp, again, because the mouth is closed, but it's got a nice feel to it nonetheless, though, for sure. Then, of course, moving on the back of the head, you've got the plant stems that reach out in this sort of green color, like a military green. And it's mixed in with some darker shades of green as well. So you guys can sort of see that, like a foresty green mixed in with the lighter shade. So if you guys can see that, and that does make it stand out more. Nice detail work for like the leaves, all the portions of those. Get the tips there. And then, of course, all the patterning for each of the sort of leaves that she's got on the sides of her head, or the back of her head, I should say. And then you've got more of the larger leaves here. Again, captured very well, I think, detail-wise. It is a little plasticky looking, I give you that. So I know, other people that have reviewed this in the past have kind of, noted that. And that is true, but I still think the detail work is definitely there. And it's got a really nice feel to it. It's really textured well. It almost feels like it'd be like a real leaf that you'd be holding here. It's very, very cool. I like it. I like it a lot. So, and then of course you got more of those there. Again, it's done in that sort of, like I said, like a military green, and you've got some darker shadings of like a foresty green mixed in as well. Like I said, which again does make it pop a little bit more, make it stand out. And I appreciate the different shades that they used here, and you can see it on all the leaves there that protrude out from her shoulders and whatnot. Very, very cool. So they really didn't skimp too much on the detail here, I think so anyways. Moving down Biollante here, so now you've got, for the main part of her body, more of that darker foresty green color. And it is mixed in. You can see some shades of like a black wash as well mixed in, again, just to add some more detail and character to it. You can see that whole viney look that she's got for her body there, and it's textured quite well. You can really feel the rough texturing on it, so it's not like it's just a smooth kind of skimp on detail design. It's actually, I think, done pretty darn well. Like I said, I'm very happy to have this figure, absolutely. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good representation of Rose Biollante. I think so, anyways. Now you can see that patterning done with that viney look that goes around the core area here, which we'll get to in just a second. But again, continuing that that design pattern, the viney texturing done in that foresty green with a little bit of black wash on it. I do apologize. This sits atop of my larger shelf, and so it gets a little bit dusty. So I try to dust it off from time to time, so I do apologize if there's some dust on it, folks, but just to showcase for you guys there. And then of course you got the core, which I do think should have had like a light up feature, especially for the price that this figure went for upon release, but it doesn't. It's just this sort of just done in this sort of orangey color. There is some nice detail work though done for the core as well, so you can see some texturing and whatnot on it. And it's the material on it is like a softer vinyl basically here, where this is the main body is done like a harder plastic. This is like a soft vinyl here. So, but nonetheless, though, in the right lighting, though, I still think the orange core pops nicely, and I like it. Nice contrast to the greens that she's got throughout her body there. But anyways, going down there, then you've got this sort of viney stems or legs, if you will. Again, done in that foresty green with a little bit of black wash for the, like I said, where like her base is there. That vine popped off. We can put it back in just a second. But here you go. You've got on the bottom part here, just kind of plain Jane, but you've got your trademark information, Toho Company Limited, Super7 Ultimate line. Super7 made in China, I should say. So very, very cool. It looks like this should have a compartment in it that would allot for like a battery to light up the core, which, like I said, would have been a cool effect. But nonetheless, this kind of is what it is. You got more of that look, the viney texturing for the body on the back of her there, so you guys can see that. You can see the slots where the vines slot into place there. Try to position them in as best as possible. As you guys can see, that is a little bit of a an issue there, that these do kind of don't sit too snug, that they are kind of loose. So that is kind of one thing to note. But just go through with the vines and the tendrils themselves. So the vines with the heads on them. Again, you got that creamish bone color that's done for the teeth on both of the vines there. And these are pretty sharp to the touch as well, so that's pretty cool. You got like a deep red done for the insides of the mouths on these. So let's see if we can pick that up on both sides for you guys there. Top, the roofs, and the bottom parts of the mouths. Okay, I'm just trying the best I can to pick those up for you guys. In there, nice detail work done for those as well. And of course, these have some leaves on them that stick up as well. So, yeah, I'm just trying to get it to stay in place here. Not the easiest thing, but nice. Again, nice texturing and detail work done for these vines here that she's got with the mouths on them. Again, etched in very, very well, nice and textured well. And more of the same for the vines with the sharp points on the ends here as you go further down. Again, more of that plant-like viney patterning, textured very well. All of it done in that foresty green with a little bit of the black wash there, like I said. Nice and pointy on the ends. These are a little bit sharp to the touch, so be a little bit mindful of that. It is a harder plastic, of course, but still captured very, very awesomely, I think, nonetheless. So, again, overall, very, very happy with it. So, but I think other than that, that pretty much captures it for Biollante's paint and detail work here. As far as articulation, as you guys can kind of see, she is, again, a well-articulated figure. How well it necessarily works, the translation of the functionality, that's a little hit and miss, I will agree. But just to kind of showcase for you guys, so you got a ball joint here at the base of the head where it joins into the neck area, or I guess we'll assume what would be like a neck. And so you can look up like that, you can look down. Not going to turn it too much, but you guys can see you can rotate. It will, if you wanted to spin it all the way around, it will. You can definitely work it to do so. But just to kind of showcase for you guys. And of course you got more ball joints or like ball hinges here for the vines. Or not the vines, the leaves that protrude out from the shoulders. There, so the two larger ones so you guys can see. So they'll hinge up and down, and of course you can spin them. They're going to, of course, be hindered by the rose petal head, but you can get some different range of motion out of them for the larger leaves. And this one here as well has that sort of ball hinge design. So you guys can see you can spin it and you can hinge it ever so slightly. It's a little tight, but you guys can get some different range of motion so that you can do some different sort of poses out of it nonetheless. So trying to make sure that the lighting's okay for you guys so that you can see. So anyway, so that covers it for that. The body's pretty much a solid piece and no real articulation there. But your other articulation that you're going to be looking at are, of course, with the vines and tendrils here. So again, these all connect on these ball hinges in the back. They are kind of loose, like I said, so they don't stay very well. I kind of have to use other portions of Biollante's body to sort of hold them in place for a pose. So yeah, I agree that's not the greatest thing in the world, but not terrible. And I stand corrected, there is actually a joint here for Biollante. So like the upper abdomen area, there you can swivel, and I don't think there's too much of an ab crunch. It's probably a ball joint, but just because of the design of her body, you're not going to really do much more other than swiveling left and right. You could probably get it to go all the way around, although I would imagine that the tendrils here, or the vines, are going to get in the way. But at least, though, it is something. So I didn't even realize that, so I actually just discovered that now. It's been a while, I think, too, since I've seen any actual reviews on this figure. It came out a couple years ago, so I do apologize for that. But so that is actually pretty cool. Nice little touch there. So again, so this way it's not just a solid plain Jane piece, but you guys can see here, like these ball hinges that connect into the main part of the body for the vines. So again, you can swivel them and in theory put them in different positions, but again, mine are just very, very loose, so they don't really want to stay in place here. But you've got secondary joints here as well, hinges here, so you can hinge out and in, and you can swivel them as well. So same thing on this side here, this vine. So you can swivel it and hinge it. So very, very cool. And then of course you've got rotation here. Another bit of a hinge, as it were, or a ball joint, I guess it would be. Although it really just swivels back and forth. But then, of course, you have a hinged jaw for the small vine mouths there. So you guys can see that. And, of course, again, on the other side there. So you got the rotation there. And, of course, the hinged jaw. And you can get it to get that jaw gaping pretty large. So it's got a pretty nice range of motion on the jaws on these. So I absolutely will say that, and really do appreciate that, folks. And then of course you've got the sort of ball hinges again for the vines, or for the tendrils themselves, I should say, trying to recall the anatomy here, Biollante, but I believe these are tendrils with the pointy ends, and they've again got those sort of ball hinges, the four of them here. So you guys can see. So again, I'm not going to get too crazy with it, but you guys can see that you can swivel and get a little bit of hinging motion, so you can try to get some different poses out of her here. Again, what you can do with it though is a little bit limited, just because of the looseness of the joints, especially not so much these tendrils here. These seem to slot in a little bit better, but the two vines with the mouths on them tend to get very loose, especially this one on mine. So, and that's why I usually end up having to have it put in place better with the lower tendrils there to kind of hold a pose on it. So yeah, so not the greatest, but I mean, at least though you do get a nice amount of articulation nonetheless. It's just the functionality of it's not necessarily there. So just something to note though, folks. But anyways, though, that pretty much goes over it for the articulation. As far as accessories, you do get a few. So I'll start with this. So you get the alternate head for Rose Form Biollante that has the open mouth on it. Some people were complaining that they should have just made a hinged jaw. I don't know how the functionality would have worked with that, trying to hinge a jaw on this. So I get why they just did a separate sculpt with an open mouth. But you guys can see the same designs with the reds and then the greens, and of course the teeth. The creamish bone color, and you got that sort of deep red, like a pinkish or deep red for the inside of the mouths there, just like with the vine heads here. Again, pretty sharp to the touch, the teeth. So really nicely detailed, and of course it goes in on the ball joint, so if you wanted to swap it out, I'll show that here just so you guys can see what the open mouth on her. It's not too bad. You guys can see the ball joint there with that sort of barbell style, and just slot it right into place like so. And now you've got Biollante with an open mouth. Very, very cool. And then of course the other accessories that you've got the alternate vine mouths that have the sort of greenish, the like like a neon green done for like blood from Biollante that have the split apart feature here to showcase when Godzilla destroyed vine heads. The functionality of it, as you guys can kind of see, is not really great on these, and it's tough to get them into place, admittedly so, as you guys could see there. So I'm not gonna fiddle with it too much or on camera, but just trying to showcase for you guys. So you have to try to figure out how to slot it into place, and it doesn't stay very great, but basically you got these pegs that come out there. So if you wanted to have the destroyed vines, you can do all that. Like I said, so you got the pegs. I'm not going to mess with this, but it pops out of place essentially. I'll show you on here. So again, as you guys can see, the functionality of it is not the best. But then you can pop it into place and you can have the destroyed vine head, like when Godzilla hit them with the his atomic breath. And yes, actually he did do that to Biollante in her rose form, so it wasn't only the beast form that he destroyed some of these heads with. Although I guess it's more known to have done in her final form, but still nonetheless. I mean, just in theory, it's cool to have it as a separate piece, but the functionality of it, not exactly the greatest. These definitely don't stay in very well. So, anyways, you get the different pieces with that. So if you wanted to try to display her differently. So, anyways. And like I said, gosh, always having a fight with getting these to stay into place here. But nonetheless, though, folks, it's still pretty cool. I think so, anyways. And so just as some different sort of display options, as you guys can see there. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that pretty much covers it for the accessories that she comes with. Let me go ahead to lastly just pop back in the closed mouth. I usually just display it with the closed mouth version. Again, so you guys can see this is pretty easy to swap out. There you go. Back to normal. As normal as Biollante gets anyways. Now, as far as sizing goes, folks, I'll start with my handy dandy ruler. Now, she's definitely on the larger end, as are pretty much all these Super7 Ultimates figures. So, just so you guys can see there, the measurements. So, looking at the top of the rose petal, or the top of that leaf on her forehead there, you're looking at just above 8 inches in height. So that kind of gives you a sense of the scaling that you're working with here. So like a 6 to 7 inch figure is going to be a bit smaller than this. And I know rose form Biollante is not as large as the beast, as her final beast form. However, or plant beast form, excuse me. However, I still like having her in a little bit of a larger size to give her more of an imposing presence. I just think it's a cool look. Now, as far as the size comparison goes, this is going to be a little tricky, but just the one that I wanted to do is comparing her to her final form, her plant beast form, if I can make it work. So, you guys can kind of see here. This is my SH Monster Arts Biollante figure that I have previously reviewed, so you guys can see the sizing. I'll see you can stand a little bit higher up than that, so you guys can see how they size in together. So again, she should be a little smaller than this form, but nonetheless, I still think it's a cool size comparison and a cool comparison either way. I apologize that I can't have them directly, but just because they take up a lot of real estate here, as you guys can see. So just kind of doing the best I can for you folks. But still very, very cool nonetheless, I think. And I'll go ahead and move out my other Biollante figure back here. And slot her back in place. As far as pricing goes, so again, when this figure came out, it was about $85, the retail MSRP. Is it worth that? I would kind of not really say so. The quality on this should be more in line with maybe like a NECA figure. So I don't think for the price that this is quite worth it. I could see it maybe being like a $50 figure. 85 is a bit high, so other people have complained about that, and I do happen to agree with that. Again, this came out a couple years ago. Prices online that I've seen, like eBay, sites like that, I've still seen some people selling it for that $85 price. I have also seen it a little higher, like around the $100 range. I can't recommend paying that much for it. But if you can, at the very least, get it for the $85, or even if you can find a little bit better of a deal, which I think I actually did when I got this figure, it's certainly worth going for at that price, especially to have an articulated rose form Biollante if you're interested. So I do recommend it from that standpoint, though, folks. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers it for this video. Again, would like to thank Nick from the Monster Report for helping me with that opening clip. And I would like to thank all you guys for watching. If you would like to subscribe, please feel free to do so. If you would like to like and or comment on any of my videos, please feel free to do so as well. And just remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you be good to yourselves, and sayonara.